The year was 1978, and Muhammad Ali was at the peak of his fame. The heavyweight champion had just defended his title for the second time against Leon Spinks, reclaiming what he believed was rightfully his. The world knew him as the greatest, a man who had transcended boxing to become a global icon. But on this particular autumn evening in Louisville, Kentucky, Ali found himself driving through the old neighborhoods of his youth, something he rarely did anymore. The streets looked different now. Where once stood proud family homes, many buildings showed signs of neglect. Broken streetlights cast uneven shadows, and the American dream seemed more distant here than in the luxurious hotels and arenas where Ali now spent most of his time. He'd come back to visit his mother, but decided to take a detour through the West End, where he had grown up as Cassius Clay. As his black Cadillac rolled slowly down a familiar street, Ali's eyes caught sight of a figure sitting on the front steps of a rundown apartment building. The man was thin, wearing clothes that had seen better days, and his head was bowed as if carrying the weight of the world. Something about the silhouette struck Ali as familiar, but he couldn't quite place it. Ali pulled over and stepped out of his car. The cool October air hit his face as he approached the figure. The man looked up, and Ali's heart nearly stopped. Those eyes, that face, even weathered by hardship and time, belonged to someone he had never expected to see again. "Jimmy? Jimmy Patterson?" Ali's voice carried a mixture of disbelief and recognition. The man on the steps looked up with tired eyes that suddenly sparked with recognition. Muhammad? Is that really you?" Jimmy Patterson had been Ali's closest friend during their teenage years. They had trained together at the Columbia Gym, dreamed together about making it big in boxing, and supported each other through the struggles of growing up in a segregated Louisville. Jimmy had been just as talented, perhaps even more disciplined than young Cassius Clay. Many had predicted that if anyone from their neighborhood would make it to the top, it would be Jimmy. "Man, I can't believe it's you," Ali said, his famous confidence momentarily replaced by genuine emotion. "What are you doing here? I thought you moved to Chicago to pursue your boxing career." Jimmy's laugh was bitter, lacking any trace of the joy Ali remembered. "That was a long time ago, Muhammad. A lot has changed since then." He gestured to the building behind him. "This is home now, has been for the past 3 years." Ali looked at the building more carefully. The paint was peeling, several windows were boarded up, and the front door hung slightly askew on its hinges. This wasn't just modest living, this was poverty, the kind that strips away dignity and hope. "Tell me what happened, Jimmy. We used to talk about conquering the world together. You were going to be the next Sugar Ray Robinson, remember?" Jimmy stood up slowly, his movements suggesting someone older than his 36 years. "Come on, let's walk. I don't want Mrs. Henderson hearing all this. She's got enough problems of her own." As they walked down the dimly lit street, Jimmy began to tell his story. After Ali had started gaining national attention in the early 1960s, Jimmy had indeed moved to Chicago with dreams of his own professional boxing career. He had talent, dedication, and the same fire that had driven his childhood friend to greatness. "I was doing well, Muhammad. Really well. I had a manager, was winning fights, building a reputation. Then came the injury." Jimmy paused, touching his left shoulder unconsciously. "Torn rotator cuff during a training session. The doctor said I could fight again, but I'd never be the same. My power was gone, my speed diminished." Ali listened intently, remembering how devastating such news would be for any fighter. Boxing wasn't just a sport for kids from their neighborhood. It was often the only path out of poverty. "I tried to continue for a while," Jimmy continued. "But losing fights means losing money. And losing money means losing everything else. My manager dropped me, couldn't afford proper medical treatment, and eventually had to give up the dream entirely." They had reached a small park where they used to train as teenagers, throwing punches at imaginary opponents and planning their futures. The playground equipment was now rusted and broken, much like the dreams that had been forged here. "I came back to Louisville about 5 years ago," Jimmy said, sitting on an old bench. "Tried to find work, but what skills does a failed boxer have? I worked construction for a while, but the shoulder injury made that difficult too. Then my mother got sick and I spent everything I had saved on her medical bills." Ali sat beside his old friend, feeling the weight of Jimmy's words. Here was someone who had started with the same dreams, the same determination, but had been derailed by circumstances beyond his control. "She passed away last year," Jimmy continued quietly. "Cancer. The medical bills left me with nothing. Lost the family house, ended up in that apartment building you found me at. It's not much, but it's what I can afford with the part-time work I can find." The silence between them was heavy with unspoken emotions. Ali thought about his own journey, the Olympic gold medal, the professional success, the fame and fortune. How easily it could have been different. How easily he could have been the one sitting on these steps instead of Jimmy. "What kind of work are you doing now?" Ali asked. "Whatever I can find. I clean offices downtown 3 nights a week, help out at a grocery store on weekends. It's not much, but it keeps me going." Jimmy's voice carried no self-pity, just the resigned acceptance of someone who had learned to survive on very little. Ali felt a surge of emotion, anger at the unfairness of life, sadness for his friend's struggles, and something else he couldn't quite name. Guilt, perhaps, for his own success while his equally deserving friend had fallen so far. "Jimmy, why didn't you reach out to me? We were brothers, man. I would have helped." Jimmy looked at his famous friend with a sad smile. "Muhammad, you became something bigger than all of us. You were fighting for civil rights, standing up to the government, becoming a symbol for people around the world. What was I supposed to do? Call you up and ask for money because I couldn't make it on my own?" The pride in Jimmy's voice was unmistakable. Even in his current circumstances, he maintained the dignity that Ali remembered from their youth. This wasn't someone looking for a handout. This was a man who had fought his battles alone and continued to do so. "Besides," Jimmy added, "I followed your career. I was proud of you, Muhammad. When you refused to go to Vietnam, when you lost your title for standing up for what you believed in, I knew you were fighting for something bigger than just yourself. My problems seemed small compared to that." Ali shook his head. "No problem is small when it's your problem, Jimmy. And you're not small. You never were." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, 2 middle-aged men reflecting on the paths their lives had taken. The streetlights had come on, casting long shadows across the park where they had once been young and invincible. "Do you ever think about what might have been different?" Ali asked. "Every day," Jimmy replied honestly. "But I've learned that thinking about what if doesn't change what is. I try to focus on getting through each day, maybe finding a way to make tomorrow a little better." Ali studied his friend's profile in the dim light. Jimmy had always been the more philosophical of the two, the one who thought deeply about life, while young Cassius had been all energy and ambition. That thoughtfulness was still there, tempered now by hard experience. "Tell me about your typical day now," Ali said. "I want to understand what your life is really like." Jimmy seemed surprised by the question, but began to describe his routine. He woke up at 5 in the morning in his small studio apartment, which he shared with 2 other men in similar circumstances. The building had no hot water most days, and the heating worked sporadically during winter. "I usually start with some exercises, nothing too strenuous because of the shoulder, but I try to stay in some kind of shape. Then I walk to the diner on 4th Street, where they sometimes need help in the kitchen. The owner, Mrs. Rodriguez, is good to me. She pays cash and feeds me breakfast when she can afford to." Ali listened, trying to imagine his proud, talented friend reduced to hoping for occasional kitchen work and a free meal. "Afternoons, I look for odd jobs, moving furniture, cleaning, whatever people need. The grocery store work is steady, but it's only weekends. The office cleaning pays the best, but it's only 3 nights a week, and I have to take 2 buses to get there. The picture Jimmy painted was of a life lived on the margins, where every dollar mattered and security was always temporary. It was a reality that millions of Americans faced daily, but it felt particularly cruel when applied to someone Ali remembered as having so much potential. What about friends? Family? Do you have anyone? Jimmy's expression grew even more somber. Most of the guys from the old neighborhood have moved on, started families, built lives. I lost touch with most of them years ago. Hard to maintain friendships when you can't afford to go out, can't reciprocate invitations, can't be the person you used to be. The isolation in Jimmy's voice was perhaps the most heartbreaking aspect of his story. Poverty wasn't just about lacking money, it was about losing connections, dignity, and hope. There's this kid, though. Jimmy's voice brightened slightly. Marcus. He's about 12, lives in my building with his grandmother. His father's not around, and his mother works 2 jobs just to keep them afloat. The kid reminds me of us at that age. Full of dreams, thinks boxing might be his way out. Ali could hear the affection in Jimmy's voice when he spoke about the boy. I've been teaching him some basics in the basement of our building. Nothing fancy, just footwork, how to throw a proper jab, how to protect himself. The kid's got natural talent, Mohammed. Real talent. For the first time since their reunion, Ali saw a spark of the old Jimmy, the mentor, the teacher, the man who had always cared about others, even when he was struggling himself. That sounds like the Jimmy I remember, Ali said with a genuine smile. Always looking out for the younger kids, always willing to share what you knew. It gives me purpose, Jimmy admitted. When I'm working with Marcus, I feel like maybe all those years of training, all that knowledge I gained, wasn't completely wasted. Maybe I can help him avoid some of the mistakes I made. They began walking back toward Jimmy's apartment building, their conversation having revealed layers of complexity in Jimmy's situation. This wasn't just a story of failure. It was a story of resilience, of finding meaning even in difficult circumstances. Jimmy, I have to ask you something, and I want you to be honest with me, Ali said as they approached the building. If I offered to help you right now, would you accept it? Jimmy stopped walking and looked directly at his old friend. What kind of help are you talking about, Mohammed? Whatever kind you need. Money, a place to stay, help finding better work. I'm serious, Jimmy. We go back too far for me to just walk away from this. Jimmy was quiet for a long moment, clearly wrestling with his response. I appreciate it, Mohammed. I really do. But I need to think about it. I've been taking care of myself for a long time now. I'm not sure I know how to accept help anymore. Ali respected his friend's honesty, even as it frustrated him. I understand, but promise me you'll think about it. And promise me this isn't the last time we see each other. I promise, Jimmy said, and Ali could see he meant it. As they reached the apartment building, Jimmy turned to face Ali one more time. Mohammed, can I ask you something? Anything. Do you ever feel guilty about your success? About how things turned out for you versus how they turned out for people like me? The question hit Ali harder than any punch he had ever taken in the ring. It was something he had wondered about, but never had to confront so directly. Sometimes, Ali admitted, especially tonight. But I've learned that guilt doesn't help anyone. What matters is what you do with the opportunities you're given. Jimmy nodded thoughtfully. That's what I thought you'd say. And that's why I've always been proud to call you my friend, even from a distance. They embraced briefly, and Ali could feel how thin Jimmy had become. As he walked back to his Cadillac, Ali's mind was racing with thoughts and emotions he hadn't expected when he decided to take that drive through his old neighborhood. The encounter with Jimmy had shaken something loose in Ali's understanding of success and responsibility. Here was someone just as deserving, just as talented, who had been dealt a different hand by life. The randomness of it, the unfairness, was almost overwhelming, As Ali drove away, he caught sight of Jimmy in his rearview mirror, climbing the steps to his building. The image would stay with him for days to come, challenging everything he thought he knew about his own good fortune and what he owed to others. The next morning, Ali woke up in his comfortable home with Jimmy's story weighing heavily on his mind. He had spent most of the night thinking about their conversation, about the paths their lives had taken, and about what he could or should do next. Ali's wife noticed his distraction over breakfast. "You seem troubled, Mohammed. What's on your mind?" He told her about the encounter with Jimmy, about the shock of finding his old friend in such difficult circumstances. As he spoke, he could see the concern and compassion in her eyes. "What are you going to do?" she asked. "I don't know yet," Ali admitted. "Jimmy's proud. He's not looking for charity. But I can't just pretend I didn't see him. Can't just go back to my life knowing he's struggling like that." Ali spent the day making phone calls, reaching out to people in Louisville who might know more about Jimmy's situation. What he learned only deepened his concern and his resolve to help. "Hey, my friends, help me by subscribing to the channel so we can reach 1,000 subscribers, even if you're watching from your TV or computer. Your subscription makes all the difference, and the algorithm will help you see more amazing stories. Leave a like or an emoji in the comments and be part of this growth." Ali discovered that Jimmy's situation was even more precarious than he had initially understood. Through his inquiries, he learned that the apartment building where Jimmy lived was scheduled for demolition in just 3 months. The city had condemned the structure due to safety violations, and all residents had been given notice to vacate. For someone already living paycheck to paycheck, finding new housing would be nearly impossible. This information galvanized Ali into action. He couldn't stand by and watch his childhood friend become homeless, but he also knew that Jimmy's pride would make direct assistance difficult to accept. Ali needed a plan that would help Jimmy while preserving his dignity. The solution came to Ali during his morning run. He remembered Jimmy mentioning the young boy, Marcus, and how he had been teaching him boxing in the building's basement. What if Ali could create an opportunity that would benefit both Jimmy and the community, something that would give Jimmy purpose and income while helping other kids like Marcus? Ali spent the next week researching and making calls. He discovered that Louisville had very few affordable youth programs, especially in the neighborhoods where kids needed them most. The idea began to take shape. A community boxing program that would provide training, mentorship, and a safe space for at-risk youth. When Ali returned to Jimmy's neighborhood the following week, he came with a proposal rather than charity. He found Jimmy at the grocery store where he worked weekends, stocking shelves in the produce section. "Mohammed?" Jimmy looked surprised to see his famous friend in the small neighborhood market. "What brings you here?" "I came to talk to you about something," Ali said. "Something that might interest you. Do you have a break coming up?" Jimmy glanced at the store manager, who nodded approvingly. Having Muhammad Ali in his store was certainly good for business, even if it meant giving his employee an extended break. They walked to a small coffee shop nearby, where Ali laid out his idea. "Jimmy, I've been thinking about what you said about that kid Marcus, about how you've been training him. What if we could do that for more kids? What if we could create a real program?" Jimmy listened intently as Ali explained his vision. A community boxing gym that would serve underprivileged youth, providing not just athletic training but mentorship, homework help, and life skills. It would be located in a neighborhood where kids needed positive influences most. "I want you to run it, Jimmy," Ali said directly. "Not as a favor, not as charity, but because you're the right person for the job. You understand these kids because you've been where they are. You know boxing, you know struggle, and you know how to survive." Jimmy was quiet for a long moment, processing the offer. "Mohammed, this sounds incredible, but I don't have the credentials to run something like that. I don't have a college degree, no formal training in youth development." "You have something better," Ali replied. You have authenticity. These kids don't need someone who learned about their problems in a textbook. They need someone who's lived through similar challenges and came out the other side. Ali had done his homework. He had already identified a building that could be renovated into a proper gym, had spoken with local officials about permits and zoning, and had even reached out to potential sponsors who might support the program. The salary would be modest to start, Ali continued, but it would be steady, with benefits, and as the program grows, so would your role and compensation. More importantly, you'd be making a real difference in kids' lives. Jimmy's eyes showed a mixture of hope and skepticism. Why are you doing this, Mohammed? Really? Ali considered the question carefully before answering. Because I realized something the other night. Success isn't just about what you achieve for yourself. It's about what you do with that success to help others. I've been blessed with opportunities, and I want to use them to create opportunities for others. He paused, then added more personally, and because you're my friend, Jimmy, because you deserved better than what life gave you, and maybe it's not too late to change that. Jimmy stared out the coffee shop window, watching kids walk by on their way home from school. Some looked carefree and happy, others seemed to carry burdens too heavy for their young shoulders. Tell me more about this program, Jimmy said finally. What exactly would we be offering these kids? Ali's face lit up as he began to elaborate. The program would be comprehensive, addressing not just athletic development but the whole child. Boxing training would be the hook that brought kids in, but they would also receive academic support, mentorship, and life skills training. We'd serve kids from ages 8 to 18, Ali explained, after school programs, summer camps, weekend activities. The boxing training would teach discipline, confidence, and physical fitness, but we'd also have tutoring, college prep, job skills, training for the older kids. Jimmy was beginning to see the vision. What about Marcus? Could he be part of this? Marcus would be one of our first members, Ali assured him. In fact, I'd like to meet him. If you're comfortable with it, maybe you could introduce us. Jimmy nodded slowly. He'd be thrilled to meet you. The kid worships you, Mohammed. He's got your picture cut out from a magazine taped to his bedroom wall. They spent the next hour discussing details. Ali had thought through many of the practical aspects, but he wanted Jimmy's input on the day-to-day operations. How would they structure the training? What kind of mentorship model would work best? How could they ensure the program truly served the community's needs? There's one more thing, Ali said as their conversation wound down. I don't want this to be the Muhammad Ali Youth Center or anything like that. This should be something that belongs to the community, something that will outlast both of us. Jimmy appreciated this approach. It reinforced that this wasn't about Ali's ego or public image, but about creating something meaningful and sustainable. When would this start? Jimmy asked. As soon as possible, Ali replied. I know you're facing a housing situation in a few months. This could solve that problem too. There's an apartment above the gym space that could be renovated. It's not fancy, but it would be yours, and you wouldn't have to worry about rent. The offer was becoming more attractive by the minute, but Jimmy still had reservations. Mohammed, I need to be honest with you. I'm not the same person I was when we were kids. The struggles I've been through, they've changed me. I'm not sure I have the energy or optimism that this kind of work requires. Ali leaned forward, his expression serious but encouraging. Jimmy, the struggles you've been through aren't weaknesses, they're strengths. These kids need someone who understands what it's like to have dreams deferred, to face setbacks, to have to rebuild. They need someone who can show them that survival isn't the end goal, growth is. Jimmy felt something stirring inside him that he hadn't experienced in years. Hope. Not just hope for his own situation, but hope that he could make a meaningful contribution to something larger than himself. Can I think about it for a few days? Jimmy asked. Of course, Ali said, but don't take too long. I'm excited about this, And I think you are too, even if you're scared to admit it. As they prepared to leave the coffee shop, Jimmy had one more question. Muhammad, what if I fail? What if I'm not good at this, or the program doesn't work out? Ali smiled, remembering the confident young man Jimmy had once been. Then we'll figure out what went wrong and try again. That's what we do, Jimmy. We get back up. That evening, Jimmy walked through his neighborhood with new eyes. Instead of seeing only decay and hopelessness, he began to notice the kids hanging out on street corners, the teenagers who seemed to have nothing constructive to do with their time, the younger children who could benefit from positive role models. He thought about Marcus, about the boy's natural talent and enthusiasm for boxing. He thought about other kids like Marcus who might never get the chance to develop their potential without the right opportunities and guidance. When Jimmy reached his apartment building, he found Marcus sitting on the front steps, just as he did most evenings, while waiting for his grandmother to get home from work. "Hey, Mr. Jimmy," Marcus called out. "You want to do some training tonight?" "Actually, Marcus, I want to talk to you about something first," Jimmy said, sitting down beside the boy. "How would you feel about training in a real gym instead of our basement?" Marcus's eyes widened. "A real gym, like where professional boxers train." "Something like that," Jimmy said with a smile. "And Marcus, how would you feel about meeting Muhammad Ali?" The boy's reaction was immediate and explosive. He jumped up from the steps, his face a mixture of disbelief and pure joy. "Muhammad Ali? The Muhammad Ali? Are you serious, Mr. Jimmy?" Jimmy laughed, feeling lighter than he had in months. "I'm serious. He wants to meet you." As Marcus peppered him with excited questions, Jimmy realized that Ali's offer wasn't just about helping him. It was about creating ripple effects of hope and opportunity throughout the community. The program could change not just Marcus's life, but the lives of dozens of other kids who needed someone to believe in them. That night, Jimmy lay in his narrow bed, listening to the sounds of the building around him, the arguing from the apartment next door, the crying baby upstairs, the sirens in the distance. But for the first time in years, these sounds didn't fill him with despair. Instead, he found himself planning, dreaming, imagining how he could make a difference. The next morning, Jimmy called the number Ali had given him. "Muhammad," he said when his friend answered, "I want to do this. I want to run your youth program." "Our youth program," Ali corrected gently. "This is going to be a partnership, Jimmy. Your program as much as mine." "Our program," Jimmy repeated, liking the sound of it. "When do we start?" "How about today?" Ali said. "I want to show you the building I have in mind, and then we can go meet with some people who can help us get this off the ground." As Jimmy prepared to leave his apartment that morning, he caught sight of himself in the small, cracked mirror by his door. The man looking back at him still showed the wear of hard times, but there was something different in his eyes. Purpose, hope, the possibility of a future that was about more than just surviving. 3 weeks later, Jimmy stood in the empty building that would soon become the East Side Community Boxing Center. The space was larger than he had imagined, with high ceilings and good natural light. Ali had brought in contractors to assess what renovations would be needed, and the plans were ambitious, but realistic. "What do you think?" Ali asked, watching Jimmy survey the space. "I think it's perfect," Jimmy replied. "I can see it all. The ring in the center, heavy bags along that wall, speed bags over there. Space for kids to do homework, maybe a small office where we can talk to parents." Ali was pleased to see Jimmy's enthusiasm and vision. Over the past few weeks, as they had worked together on planning the program, he had watched his friend transform. The defeated man he had found on those apartment steps was being replaced by someone with purpose and energy. "Marcus is going to flip when he sees this," Jimmy continued. "He's been asking me every day when he can start training here." Because they had decided to begin with a small group of kids, maybe 10 or 12, to work out the program's structure before expanding. Marcus would be among the first. along with several other children Jimmy had identified in the neighborhood. "Jimmy, I want to ask you something," Ali said as they prepared to leave the building. "Are you happy? I mean, really happy with how this is working out?" Jimmy considered the question seriously. "Mohammed, 3 weeks ago I was facing homelessness and had no prospects for anything better. Today, I'm planning a program that could change kids' lives. I have a job that gives me purpose, and I have hope for the future. Yeah, I'm happy. More than happy." Ali nodded, satisfied. "Good. Because I have one more surprise for you." He handed Jimmy an envelope. Inside was a lease agreement for the apartment above the gym, along with keys. "It's yours," Ali said simply. "Rent-free as long as you're running the program. Consider it part of your compensation package." Jimmy held the keys in his hand, feeling their weight. They represented more than just housing. They represented stability, dignity, and a fresh start. "Mohammed, I don't know how to thank you for all this." "Don't thank me yet," Ali said with a grin. "Wait until you've been dealing with a dozen energetic kids every day for a few months. You might change your mind about how grateful you are." Jimmy laughed, but he knew that working with those kids would be the most rewarding challenge he had faced in years. As they walked out of the building together, Jimmy felt a sense of completion. Not the end of his story, but the end of a difficult chapter and the beginning of something new. The boy who had once dreamed of boxing glory had become a man who would help other young dreamers pursue their own goals. The circle was complete, but in a way neither of them could have imagined when they were teenagers throwing punches in that old park. Sometimes the greatest victories happen outside the ring, in the quiet moments when one person reaches out to help another, when success is measured not in titles won, but in lives changed. 6 months later, the East Side Community Boxing Center was thriving. 23 kids were regular participants, ranging in age from 8 to 17. Marcus had indeed become one of the star pupils, but more importantly, his grades had improved dramatically, and he had developed the confidence and discipline that would serve him well beyond boxing. Jimmy had found his calling. Every morning he woke up in his apartment above the gym with a sense of purpose he had never experienced before. The work was challenging. Dealing with kids from difficult backgrounds required patience, creativity, and emotional resilience, but it was also deeply fulfilling. Ali visited regularly, sometimes to help with training, sometimes just to check on the program's progress. He was proud of what Jimmy had built, but more than that, he was proud of how his friend had rebuilt himself. The program had attracted attention from local media and community leaders. Other neighborhoods were asking about replicating the model. What had started as one man's desire to help an old friend had become a template for community development and youth empowerment. But perhaps the most meaningful moment came on a quiet Tuesday evening when Jimmy was closing up the gym. Marcus approached him with a serious expression. "Mr. Jimmy," the boy said, "I want to ask you something." "What's on your mind, Marcus?" "When I grow up, I want to do what you do. I want to help kids like you helped me. Will you teach me how?" Jimmy felt a surge of emotion that caught him off guard. This was what success really looked like, not the applause of crowds or the accumulation of wealth, but the knowledge that you had made a difference in someone's life, that your influence would ripple forward into the future. "I'll teach you everything I know, Marcus," Jimmy promised, "and maybe someday you'll teach other kids too." As Jimmy turned off the lights and locked up the gym that night, he reflected on the journey that had brought him to this moment. The path from those apartment steps to this place of purpose had been unexpected, but it had led him exactly where he needed to be. Sometimes the most important victories are the ones that happen when nobody's watching, when success is measured not in personal achievement, but in the lives you touch and the hope you create. Jimmy Patterson had found his championship, and it was more meaningful than any title belt could ever be. Hey, my friends. Help me by subscribing to the channel so we can reach 1,000 subscribers, even if you're watching from your TV or computer. Your subscription makes all the difference, and the algorithm will help you see more amazing stories. Leave a like or an emoji in the comments and be part of this growth.